لو رحت زان شؤون من الله ترى أي سنة قبلنا أدري قبلنا أدري تخلص على كان أنت قبل ذلك مسلكم كله نقول ورد نازل له هقدر فيه كل ما عسمعوا من حرينا تجي كان حينا نقبله كم بيت أنا أقول له نحن أبصحنا قال كان يقبل ما بحث الجزء إذا سرّا ما تقدر تسويها تمثيله وتصرف ولا ما يعرفونه بس يعرفون تايكبر إننا نوافقه في الحق وانا شكرنا هكذا بتكونس ناس سقطايو سدرامتات صح مبالغ قدر جبل بأسرتي مع أبو قال الكونتينرات أنت صرفين سدتن سب جنزم شاط الجمال ترافيكين لوري زي المركنوسس كون برجرنا وسيدنا يوم لو تتمثل حجي نرسنا حتى لا زي النفس وكفسب أبزلوتي حلاف النتالو حموش سابقتي لن بيني يسرحين بحد لن بيني يسرحين قد بحد ينكسر هذا خلاه انتهينا هنا حجي درسنا خن حتى انتهينا بالمسلكم أنا مني أنت حساس رايك مئيو شكرنا يتوم كالوز سوات منسات شغلتها قولوا لي وليش أخي قلت صديق أنا تحساس باين تأيو شكرنا يتوم كالوز منسات بعين ولادي ويحفتي ويحاو ويجي دلاي فتحي خبل كل خونه تنفقوا عادتات تسليلهم ساقي يزلوا ولا حتى قربوا ويبلن حدث كرهبوا مقدي رخوا له مقدي حسوا قبل ركب دي ويسعب قلب زي بلو أخواتات لا تخافلكوا تزاربات تسبيل الدخم قمنا قرقر يزوطلو إنسان كان حتى تقبالنا حجي عبد حدش مدرخ زتقاقين جيقالنا قبره سقز بلن كنتهم بكياتهم عبقي قال ما نسوي قال كم زي قال أي بورونيو نزل التأمن اللمو نمنفساون أمراون أننا أقال بوهبنا أبتنزر السعناين فقرن الحرحين تمارسنا أبدانية حلنا مكتوب أبسلكي قنوتات كم يخيد له أمريكا حجها أنت تبلا الله وزسنا فخن بهال كم متأنل علينا بخنو بزيت أطوب نقول له قوون أمر خبيب زحل أمريكا خمس خوينا أبكار خندي متأمل أبرسنا ينحكينا أبيدنا يدلو موسق سعيد خالد نحنا نحر حبيبنا نحنا نحري فسينا نايك هذا خمدي أكونن حجينا خاني نفسنا نزلنا متعنا أتولنا قال أنتي كمل ذلك أبز حجي لو تنتهي ذلنا ساعات سايس كي يسقون تمسح مالته يقول بط ساعات خلينا يو حق خلينا يو كم تراي كذا نخلي محماية يكون لقاكم له سلازي حجي عبزي برتقهم خانهم فتقول لنا قلبي لا يكون نزل حسألهم كتب له ناي نفس وقف سعرية اللي وموزي أحد رايب لكم قالت هايكم لذلك ني شواني منقسي وشوخ تقولوا civic organization then organization زي أتن كيمن زلوا أخبر تعال زين براخاني حجي خدمة ناي الكريستيو ناي engineers ناي محبر سلاحتينيات ناي تمهارو إذا قالوا له ناي سكون civic organization حموش سلق عندي طوائبي حجي تايك بدالي تعمل كبابات تايك أدم نعلم ممكن تكون تخيل نحات الفقر نسخبات حيش نسخبات حشي كن بهاد نتخالق نحنا ندير خبرة نتخالق من الوقت إزاء حتى رايد كان أنت يبل أبزي سرعة مع السمع لكن سحجي بقى سلسة تلعلو لا أجهم بلو ذو زروا سمعي ماني لمن أجهم زبل بزي لك نسيوكو على ما يسخونا بخطتو كلا إتقاسون بزي لك نسيو قاسي إرترا أي متعورتين سلازي حجي حابرنا نصرح له قواني أنا يبل لك نسيو بزيادة كمان حجي كنت بصحح جمر كنك على الأخذ أجوهن رأيز بل كلا انتي تقول دالي صبوك تقبل كلها نزخوني يكون سب نهزبي نعخاي كمي زيادة زبكة عنا زبكة هو زبكة تحس زبكة نخالق تقبل لي ما نكون كأخاص خاص كل ترخبه نتخالق هاي كلنا زيادة تقول لي قلنا سلازي نرس خالق أخا صبوك تقبل انتي زبهان أو نرس خالق مكر حمد الله كيقفها نرس خالق أخا تقبله تعلم دي أخا أنا حكسر بزين قمة الله نفتنا الله ينبر ناي كله أكل ناي كله جزي كله تسلس نرسنا الناس فوق نقول ناي إرترا سجم حج تدارينا لنا ناي حبيب كام سرح نبر سجم كلون حدث تداري كوينات بزوات أب 8-9 مليون زلوا هزبي أو انتاوي لو تقبل كبيدي نحن عندنا حالة ما عندنا بلع سواتينا 3-7 مليون بتن تفرق حاول حفظ عن بعض قبل الجوزينا حدا نقدر ناي نحلو بجلة كله غير قل أبنا حاجة مسخلة كلها نحدا إنا في اللي أخسع 5 بالنان في الحق 5 ومو إزاي مسكون لحنا يخون يكركم كلنا خلوا إحنا يكلنا إننا بقبري نري نا إرترا سلام نا إرترا ساعات نخالق لأفريقيا هجراتون أبنا سخوني يغني لي
Thank you so much, Mama Baba. All right, our next speaker is Mr. Yosef Gebrhiwot.
That's okay. Well, you still need your bio.
Yosef Gebrhiwot was brought up in a high school in Mendefera, had 2 years at Addis Ababa University and 2 years as a teacher in Assab. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology and philosophy from Long Beach State University. Now he serves as a temporary chair of Felsi, and his writings are found in asmarino.com. Without further ado,
All right, let me start the title of the subject matter that I'm going to talk today is Eritrea Fluid Totalitarianism in Gulag Archipelago. There are 2 things I want to do. First of all, we have to keep in mind that the goal of this symposium is to expose the nature of the Isaias regime. That's the primary aim that brought us, that gathered us here. Now, how do we do that? It's a question. And it's based on one premise, and that premise is that the West doesn't understand the nature of the Isaias regime to the scope or to the extent and depth that it should. That is basically, that's where our premise is found. Now, what I'm trying to do is, why am I saying that the West doesn't understand the nature of the Isaias regime? They do understand that it is a bad government. They do know a lot of things that's happening in Eritrea, yet they have never come to distinguish it from the rest of the dictatorships that exist in Africa, for example, or in any other place. What I'm saying now is that I will try to establish two facts. First, that it's not the normal dictatorship that you found in Africa. You cannot explain the plight of the Eritrean people or the conditions in Eritrea as the absence of democratic rights. You cannot explain it that way. The moment you say that, you humanize the Isaias regime. Because there are so many other countries that have no democratic rights, that are at least that they don't have a lot of. Higher? Okay. There are, okay, how about now?
Yeah.
All right, okay. There are so many countries, for example, take for example Egypt. It's a dictatorship, and so many democratic rights are absent in that country, yet you would never compare Egypt with Eritrea. So what is it about Eritrea that makes it worse than any other dictatorships in Africa? I will talk about two things. The first one will be that it is totalitarianism, and the second one, that it is, even among totalitarian states, there is a unique form of totalitarianism that has made the cost of the rule of the Isaias regime so expensive. All right, okay, all right, okay. Here it is. What is totalitarianism? In this one, there is nothing original about it. You could easily find it, you could easily Google it and come up with the same answer. Totalitarianism is a political concept where the state has complete control over all aspects of public and private life. The type of government is often characterized by a single-party dictatorship, censorship, and propaganda. Totalitarian regimes seek to control not just political life, but also cultural, social, and economic aspects of society. In other words, all totalitarian regimes seek total control. The word totalitarianism itself comes from total, from a totality. So the thing is, they want I mean, the control should be on all aspects of life. That is probably one of the best explanations of any totalitarian system wherever you go. Could you? Okay. Here is also the totalitarian characteristics. I'm not going to dwell that much, but it's not that important. A single party, a single ruling party, a dictator known as the supreme leader, use of propaganda and state-controlled media, the state controls all aspects of life, including economy, media, and education, use of repression, surveillance, and threat of violence to maintain power and control, suppress individual thoughts and promote conformity or group thinking. These are all characteristics about a totalitarian system. Now, what we have to look at is that all of these are found in the case of Eritrea. Let me give you one example. Take, for example, Warsai, the typical Warsai, who is taken out, who is uprooted from his family, taken to Sawa, and then probably live in indefinite national service for many years to come. The idea is one thing. The idea is, how do you destabilize your own people? Because unless you destabilize it, then you can't have a total control of the population or over the individual. Once Warsai is separated from all links of life, let's say from his family, from his religion, from his neighborhood, from his relatives, from his education, and then almost like a slave. A slave would be a good example. When you take a slave from some people, you take it from his community and you cut him off from his culture, from his language, from his family, and everything else that he holds it dear. That is exactly the aim of the Isaias regime when it conceived the indefinite national service. Now, all of this is easy to see for you because there's nothing new about that. Huh? What is particularly different though is, go ahead, continue. Those are examples of totalitarian Eritrea. Now, okay. Go ahead. I will go back. We'll come back later. Down. Yeah, down. Yeah. So the last one. No, this is the last one. Sorry, guys. All right. Okay. Let me put it this way. I have it over here. It's what makes it a unique form of totalitarianism. We have seen the similarities between other totalitarian states in Eritrea. Now we'll see the difference between other totalitarian states in Eritrea. For example, think about this. When we are talking about the similarities between all these totalitarian states, we are always talking about what happened to the people and the total control that takes over the people's lives. But now, all totalitarian states, all totalitarian leaders take their nations as laboratories. Think about a laboratory setting. Now, the laboratory setting is, in this case, what should a totalitarian state be in order to succeed? That is a question. There are about 5 characteristics. One, that totalitarian state has to be big. In fact, very big. Hannah Arendt, a writer who wrote The Origins of Totalitarianism, says that small nations cannot survive for long. They cannot survive for long if they are totalitarian states. The reason is simple. The cost would be too high. That's the premise of Hannah Arendt's take on small nations. The second one is, if a totalitarian state has to succeed, it has to be entirely sealed off. It has to be entirely sealed off, which means that if it is a laboratory, then think about this. The Guinea pigs has to remain inside the laboratory, and no interfering variables have to come from the outside to the inside. So no essential variables have to escape, and no interfering variables has to get into inside the laboratory if the social experimentation is to succeed. In the case of Eritrea, we'll see that doesn't hold true. The third characteristic is that it has to be self-reliant. You have heard the word self-reliance, or in Tigrinya, Now, why do all totalitarian states want to be self-reliant? It's not in order to excel in what they do. It's simply because self-isolation or the sealing over the country cannot succeed unless they have a self-reliant economy. Because if they don't have a self-reliant economy, they have to open the country and the laboratory will fail. As a result of this, what they are doing is, in the case of Eritrea, we'll see that that too also fails. The fourth one is it has to have an ideology. An ideology, as we know, for example, communism or fascism. In the case of Germany, it was Nazism. In the case of China and Russia, it was communism. The fifth part of, in order to succeed, is it has to have, at least, it has to be able to use modern amenities. Modern amenities means for example, they have, there is no such thing as a pre-modern totalitarianism, precisely because you need modern amenities in order to maintain a totalitarian state. For example, the use of telephone, the use of arms, the use of railways and stuff like that. Now, let me go to see how paradoxical is in the Eritrean case. Eritrea still remains totalitarian, although it fails in all those 5 characteristics that I talked about. Eritrea is a small nation, one, a small nation that has stayed for too long, which means it has stayed totalitarian. It has stayed totalitarian for about 20-25 years. Eritrean borders are porous, which means it has been impossible for Eritrea to seal off its borders. Eritrea doesn't have a self-reliant economy, although it says so. It's dependent on the outside, especially on the diaspora. It's a unique form of totalitarianism, probably the only case among totalitarian states, precisely because the totalitarian system in Eritrea stands with the help of people outside Eritrea, both for economic and political or diplomatic reasons. And then Eritrea is a low-tech nation. I don't have to tell you that, you know how low-tech Eritrea is. Yet, it has maintained its totalitarian system. And the last one is, although people talk about communism and so on and so forth, Eritrea has been devoid of ideology. There is no such thing as ideology in the Eritrean system, in the Eritrean totalitarian system. Now, why am I mentioning all of this? Because that's where I'm coming to the results of this paradox, which is fluid totalitarianism. In the case of Russia, for example, all totalitarian states cannot survive without mass mobilization. In all cases, there has to be a mass mobilization if the totalitarian system is to continue. For example, in Russia, it was collectivization, where almost 12 million people perished. In China, it was cultural revolution, between 15 and 55 million people were lost. And there was also another one, the Great Leap Forward, another 10 or 15 million people were lost at that time. In Cambodia, it was an agrarian socialist revolution where 2 million, almost 1/4 of the population were killed. In Eritrea, the case is the indefinite national service. Now, take a look at this. In all of these are mass mobilizations. You have destabilize your own population if the totalitarian system is to continue. Okay, now take a look at this. There is a word in the Gedli era that was used in Sharia. It was known as tahdid. Probably it comes from the Arabic word
reshuffle.
or reshuffle, yeah. So the idea of reshuffle is, for example, if there is a battalion of, let's say, 500 Tegadelti, then you leave them for about 2 or 3 years. They live together, they fight together, they work together. And of course, as human beings, they began to make social links among one another. There was intimate relationship among one another. That is where they become travel to the totalitarian system, because that is where they will organize against the system. So it knows the totalitarian system, every totalitarian system knows this. So it has to reshuffle them. Immediately after 2 years, it has to reshuffle the team. The reason is now they will have an alien person besides them. And they don't know him. It will take them another 2 years to create trust among themselves. And at that moment, it has to reshuffle them again. Now, it is that formula that is being used throughout Eritrea right now. What you do is you reshuffle them. It's almost like what do you call it? So you think about this every time and then because the moment the moment they look alive, then it makes a threat to the nation. So this is perpetual displacement, or you call it dislodgement. Perpetual, they could call it displacement, dislodgement, or uprooting. So what you do is you uproot a certain people. In the case of Eritrea, mostly among the young, that was the if you could push number 4. You could see in the case of Eritrea, everyone, or as I said before, every one of them have to have a reason in order to conduct that mass mobilization. In Russia, it was collectivization. In Cambodia, it was an agrarian revolution. Now, in the case of Eritrea, it is the indefinite national service. Now, through the indefinite national service, the idea is to take total control over the website, which is a soldier that doubles as a slave. And then, of course, the destruction of the nuclear family, the militarization of the educational system, what they call it a pipeline today, a pipeline to military, the monopolization of the economy, the mass exodus, the number of wars it generated, the proliferation of prisons, 400 plus of them, the depopulation of the country. All of this is created by indefinite national service. So that indefinite national service has become like a weapon of mass destruction. It has become a weapon of mass demobilization, destabilization. That's how it keeps destabilizing its population. Now, I will give you one, so that I could make it I will give you one aspect of that one, the prison system of Eritrea, in order to see how a totalitarian system works. Could you have the other, the other one there?
Slide, yeah.
The other slide, yeah. This one or the other one. In that one, you will see that in Eritrea, as you know, it has been called the largest open-air prison in the world. When you talk about the largest open-air prison in the world, what we are talking about is the nation itself. So, okay. Have it. Well, okay. I have explained it in one of my articles as made up of 3 concentric circles, the one embedded into the other. So the outermost circle is Eritrea itself, where we will find the entire population is considered as prisoners. Why? I'm not going to go and tell you all of the horrors that the Eritrean population has faced, but you could easily see that all right, okay. You see, for example, gutted out villages, no farming hands, villages mainly populated by the elderly, boarded up houses, hollowed out towns and cities, underage, overage, populated by underage, overage, and women, malnutrited people, degraded education, movements that are totally carteled with checkpoints, rampant prostitution, hundreds of thousands of women that are living like, that couldn't find any partners. In Asmara, there is no water, no electricity, destitution is all over the land, traveling is prohibited. You can't go from A to B without many checkpoints in between. the horror stories that we know about everything, merchants totally bankrupted, and so on and so forth. The health system, you know it. When people have serious diseases, they go either to Kenya or Sudan. So all of this is in the outer circle in Eritrea itself. That's why it's called the largest open air prison in the world. You go down to the down all the way down. I'm looking at the three concentric circles. You can find it. Okay, over here. That's it. So this is the incarceration state. Now there is Eritrea, and then the middle one is the one that I have already talked about, the indefinite national service. Now in the indefinite national service, I don't want to go over it again, but we have said how the nuclear family has been destroyed. And when they approved the one side, it's from his family, residents, relevant others, worshipping places, education, culture, history, and community. He's cut off from all of these places. And we know exactly what's happening to the one side, hundreds of thousands of them. They are trapped inside the international, inside the indefinite national service, which you find it throughout the wilderness in Eritrea. That is supposed to be a prison on its own, because people always try to escape from that prison, and the result is the mass exodus of hundreds of thousands of young people. Now, within that circle, there is the real one, the real prisons that traditionally known as prisons, which are the more than 400 prisons that we see all over the Eritrean landscape. That's why I call it the archipelago of the desert, because the entire desert and semi-desert of Eritrea, and including the remote islands, where there are no people living over there, all of these have turned out to be prisons. So in these prisons, we see a lot of things, but there are supposed to be tens of thousands of them at minimum. There are different types of prisons, the brick and mortar concentration camps, underground replicas from the Gedli era, sewage tunnels, shipping containers, makeshift ones that move with the army, anonymous villas, deserted islands. All kinds of prisons are now to be found all over Eritrea. And then, what kind of inmates do they have? Mostly army deserters, conscription invaders, parents of deserters and invaders, religious prisoners, random prisoners. The Asena phenomena, yesterday we were talking about this, a few friends. What kind of torture system are they using? Medieval torture system, Almaz, helicopter, auto, Jesus Christ. These kind of things are always talked about by the one side. So we have these three concentric circles created by the PFDJ. And now to give you a simple example of a one side. Think about a young man who has been living in the outer circle, which is in Eritrea, but he's still hiding somewhere in Eritrea. At one point, Kufa comes, the roundups comes, and they take him to Sawa, and then they put him in the indefinite national service. After 3 or 4 years, he had had enough. He tries to escape, and he is apprehended at the border. And then where do they take him? They take him immediately to the innermost circle in a prison. So they don't kill. By the way, if they are deserters or invaders, they don't hold them for long in the prison. Probably at most 2 or 3 years. Why? Because they have to recycle them. Once they stay there for about 2 or 3 years, then they come out of that, and then they put them back to the indefinite national, to the middle circle. So they keep rotating all this system until one day the young man or the young woman escapes Eritrea. Now the fourth circle is my time? Okay, I will take 2 minutes. Okay, and I will. The fourth circle is the diaspora itself. Even in diaspora, even though it's not as harsh as the one thing, people have have been held hostage by the totalitarian system inside Eritrea. It probably is before you remember that both Martin Blount and probably also Michael Rubin have optimistically talked about the diaspora population, which I concur, but I'm not as optimistic as them. I also see the dark side of it, which means that they still remain, there are a lot of people that still remain hostage to the Isaias regime inside Eritrea. So we have these four circles where you could say that it's where you could define Eritrea as an incarceration state. Now, the misery index of this Eritrean citizen is how deep does he find himself or herself inside this conservative circles. The deeper you go, the misery index grows greater. So this probably explains more than anything else the totalitarian system in Eritrea. But I haven't explained what do I mean by fluid totalitarianism. Briefly, I will put it in 1 minute. For Eritrea to remain a totalitarian state, it cannot stop its demobilization because of the disadvantages it's had as a small nation, as a porous nation. For example, every time, if you see in Sawa, every year 20 or 30,000 young kids are taken to Sawa. But every year, a similar amount of young kids also leave Eritrea, which means the government cannot stop. It has to keep feeling that gap left by those who have left Eritrea. In order to do that, the mobilization inside Eritrea, the mass mobilization inside Eritrea can never stop. While in the case of China, Russia, it stopped. After a few years, it stopped. But because they have managed to close the country, and whatever thing that they have done, according to them, they have succeeded, and they stopped. But in Eritrea, it cannot stop this mass mobilization. As a result of that, it has been now hollowed out, entirely hollowed out nation. At this point in time, it's believed that there are only 2 million people in Eritrea, and not only that, the central part, the 20 to 40 years population is almost entirely gutted out. That's why I'm calling it a hollowed Eritrea. It's almost like a hollowed out tree that seems to, when it stands tall, that it seems to have some life, but when wind comes and then it falls down. So anyway, all that I am saying is that not only is Eritrea a totalitarian, but a totalitarian at a disadvantage, because it cannot stop its mass mobilization. And as a result of that, we are facing a nation almost at committing suicide, literally, the nation committing suicide. Sorry for stretching the time. Thank you very much. Hopefully, it's a bit complex.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone from the Zoom have any questions?
From people participating on Zoom?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Yusuf Dawiyawat, the chairman of Felsi. As you explained, the totalitarian government is like Isaias supporting, and being a small country could not survive for a long period of time. What do you think, or for how long do you think ICS can survive from now without facing any challenge from inside Eritrea or outside? Thank you.
Okay, I didn't have time, but probably that's the most important question, because what I was trying to explain was that even though Eritrea is disadvantaged in the sense that as a totalitarian success story, it has the disadvantage of being small, porous, dependent, devoid of ideology. Yet it has succeeded up to now to stay for 25 years, which is unusual. For example, if you compare it with the case of Cambodia, it collapsed after 4 years. It's a small nation, and it collapsed exactly after 4 years. Now, the question is, why is Eritrea standing if it is that much disadvantaged? If it is so hollowed out inside so hollowed out, as I say, demographically, economically, socially, and everything else, I think the reason is that there hasn't been anybody to push it. There hasn't been. For example, in the case of Cambodia, it's Vietnam that did the pushing, not the people inside Cambodia, not the Cambodians, but the Vietnamese that did the pushing. In the case of Eritrea, though, nobody has done the pushing. For example, the EPRDF policy was containment, not regime change. But if somebody seriously takes regime change, not only Eritreans, but also the surrounding countries, like Sudan or Ethiopia or Tigray, and regional powers, or the West itself, then pushing Eritrea would make it collapse because it has been entirely followed out. So I cannot say which one. I mean, I cannot say when will Isaias go, but the conditions are already set. It has been totally followed out, especially after the war in Tigray. Isaias has been living in fear, has been paranoid, and the entire nation now is living in the trenches. And if the young people in Eritrea have any chance, almost everybody wants to escape the nation. So this is a very fragile nation. It's easy, it's almost ready to collapse. The problem is no one is doing the pushing from outside.
Thank you very much, everyone. Actually, when you were talking, I was thinking about the Eritrean president's speech. I don't even remember when or where, but he was saying how he has single-handedly destroyed industries, the country, everything, the economy, the people, and everything. The only thing he did not say, however, was change me. So maybe this is a good idea. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is going to be, Dr. Yabio Waltemariam. I think I have seen Dr. Yabio here. I'm going to welcome him, but before, we have to read your bio. Okay, thank you. Hannah will read it.
Nebiel Wilkamariam was born in Asmara in the middle of the British administration of Eritrea. He went to school in Asmara, Arba, and Mekelle before going on to college in Cairo, Egypt. After the completion of his first degree, he served as an assistant research office in the middle of Awash at the Ogaden in Ethiopia, and won a UN FAO scholarship to attend at Colorado State. In the interim, he got a job posting in Ghana, northern Nigeria, and then in Ethiopia. Thereafter, went to McGill University for a PhD, and upon graduation, established an agricultural consulting firm with its headquarters in Afar. and was part of the student movement in Eritrea who initiated and sustained the armed struggle that took the helm of the newly established country in 91. He currently is an adjunct professor at CUNY, City University of New York, and a grandfather of a 12-year-old boy. Without further ado,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to express my feelings on Eritrea. But before I talk about my paper here, I would like to emphasize on what Yosef said. There got to be a push from outside to really, if we need help, change in Eritrea. And it is not a taboo to request a friend to assist you in getting rid of the evil regime. So I would vote for anybody who comes and push Isaias and his clique out of Eritrea. In any case, now let me go back to my paper. APLF's anti-intellectualism explained. I have improved this paper, and so this is an old paper which I've seen here, but it's okay. If you see the title here, it's EPLF's anti-intellectualism explained. But now I have a quotation here which really fits to my undertaking and this piece of paper, which I'd like to share with you. It says, the ink of a scholar is more holy than the blood of the martyr. Yes, the Hadith, that's Islamic book, not the Quran, but the Hadith. በትግርኛ ክንብሎ ከለና ድማ ናይ ምሁር ቀለም ወይ ብርዒ ካብተን ስውን ዝተቐደሰ እዩ. So you can see what diametrically opposed to what we believe for a long, long time in Eritrea, actually, since we started fighting gunshot to liberate the country. So, go back to my paper. Therefore, EPLF was the core membership of EPLF was, there is no question, it's the educated, it's the city dwellers like me. This is the first paragraph here, and of course, it also makes the peasants and the agro-pastoral to look upon differently to the educated people. In a sense, the educated town people were a little bit intimidated about how they've been looked upon. So that was the first chapter. I'm just running, I just have my things to finish, and it leaves my paper is a little bit longer. Now, throughout the War of Liberation and the 30 years after, a selected cabal of city boys firmly hold tight on this particular but sizable section of the population, which is the peasantry and the agro-pastoralists. Without shame, it employed them to do its bidding, fighting against real and imaginary enemies. Later, that is, after triumphantly entered Asmara, it deliberately picked up fights with the educated natives, the NGOs, and other aid-giving foreign government agencies, all in the guise of preventing the imperialists from gaining foothold in Eritrea. Because the APLF was mildly, I shouldn't say superficially, but mildly infected with this Marxist-Leninist ideology, it flaunted the idea that the working class was in the lead. I don't think we have any working class as such to talk about. We have a few industries, but not to the proportion where we see them in other countries, especially in the developed countries. However, sometime during the army struggle, they come with something new, which we call the NDR, joining the rest of them, including the peasantry, including the educated, and what we call the bourgeoisie. Although we don't have any bourgeoisie, but let's say people with money, people with real estate, they said, oh, they're going to be part of the NDR. They came to their sense, at least. This is equally true for the ELF, the Eritrean Liberation Front, that came half a decade earlier than the front that outsmarted him, which is the APLF, of course. relatively though, the ELF was less concerned and in fact embraced educated elements as vanguard of the revolution. Rather, it was more focused on how to keep balance between the plateau dwellers and the lowland inhabitants. In other words, between the Muslims and the Christians. In plain English, of course, what I mean by here is that between those who profess Islam and the followers of Christian religion. After all, the ELF leadership did not lose sight of the fact, because of the Highlanders' irredemptive stance on the question of Eritrea's statehood some 78 years ago, that Eritrea was shortchanged from becoming a free, independent state like Libya and Somalia. They were under the same law. That means they were under Italy. So I think the Muslims were resentful of this. There is no question about it. Indeed, the history of Eritrea would have read differently had it not been that. But again, to quote Karl Marx here, Karl Marx said something. We cannot, we operate on what our forefathers, we carry a baggage, we have a baggage, we cannot come out from this baggage. In a short word, what it means is, men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances given and transmitted from the past. So we are what we were. We cannot get out from that. Therefore, that's why Eritrea was federated right with Somalia and what's the other country? Libya got their independence. Simply because we have that the old baggage that makes us separate differently. In particular, when the Highlanders, when the Christians were a redemptionist view, and then the Muslims against it, and that's why we were federated. So this Karl Marx quotation is, quite surprising. It is true. In other words, the war of 1961-90 wouldn't have taken place had it been that the two contending forces at that time come together, thus sparing the lives of hundreds of thousands of innocent people perished in the war. It is useful to remind here that the Eritrean people, like many states in Africa, have much in common with their neighbors than with each other. We have Konama, there is Konama on the other side. We have Afar, they have Afars on the other side. We have Beni Amr, another Beni Amr, or what you call them, Nara, or whatever, on the other side. This is not peculiar to Eritrea, because other African countries are the same. In other words, this is something line drawn by Europeans a century and a half years ago. In this regard, it's more important for ELF to check the balance of power, not tilted in favor of its Christian-dominated rival front, whose kin and kin are across the border, across the America. Similarly, while the APLF negated many historical realities, unbelievable APLF has been distorting history to assert the apprehension of the Muslim half, to make them comfortable. Nevertheless, it worked tirelessly to ensure the Highlanders remained dominant and the educated class subservient to the selected few who owns everything, including the life of the unborn. Before the APLF became forced to reckon with, its formidable rival, ELF, hunted the Christians regardless of their social status. In this case, educated, not educated, it was an equal opportunity. And then as far as ELF is concerned, it's not like EPLF, which was really targeting those educated and town people. It treated all the same in as long as they didn't threatening its dominance in the fighting field. Hence, peasants were robbed and killed, and schoolboys who joined it in its arduous struggle fell victim to witch hunt by a string of informers from within. In contradistinction, the EPLF systematically destroyed any movement inspired by the educated in the field, and not surprisingly, did it stealthily, salahta, to avoid outcry by observers. In passing, I would like to make it clear that none of the so-called liberation fighters in Africa parallels EPLF's cruelty in dealing with the educated persons. Not MPLA, not any of the African organizations. EPLF was something that was took that step to liquidate any enlightened person. No one parallels to it. One cannot dismiss it as a figment of imagination if one unequivocally asserts that the notion of EPLF's anti-educated stance has its origin in Chinese cultural revolution in the mid-1960s. As fate had it, the current high-ranking members of EPLF were in the front seat, enjoying the spectacle that reigned over China between 1966 to 76. The Eritrean petty bourgeoisie were accorded front seat as honored guests of Chairman Mao, and the elite parroting its nihilistic dictum, Mao's nihilistic dictum, were witness on how the literary intellectuals, social and physical scientists, bright students were singled out as enemies of the people and cast away and never to rise again. In other words, Isaias and his group were there, including Mr. Habos is there, I think, he's still alive. They were there when that cultural revolution occurred, and that was a havoc, especially against people who voiced different voices, who wants to mend communism and make it plausible to the Chinese revolution, the Chinese culture. So they learned from that's my thesis. I said, Isaias and his group learned how Mao dealt with this kind of people. It was at the height of this mass upheaval in China that Isaias Afwerki, a Christmas graduate of Haile Selassie University, conceived the idea that educated people are worth more dead than alive. Yes, they are more dead than alive. The first victim of Sharia's machination against educated rival was an active member, Musia Tesfamariam, who was the first guy, by the way, they shot because he was branded as a CIA agent, to just cut it short. He was also an outspoken person and took bad example for the cabal, so they have to make him as an example, and he really was the first victim. And nobody talks about Mallas. The thing is, his father was a colonel in the Ethiopian army also. I think that's why they suspected Mallas Tesfamariam, Colonel Tesfamariam. He was branded as a CIA agent planted by America to spy on the National Liberation Front. Of course, all is bogus. This is not true. However, it helped the leadership to set up a precedent that would serve it throughout its life, including when undeservingly become the government of the day. By far, the greatest challenge of EPLF leadership in their view for interrogation and eventual execution. The surveillance, false accusation, and arrest didn't stop even when the EPLF was in dire situation. That is, while still fighting for its survival, this thing continued. Despite its military setback in 1978, the EPLF secured its base in areas difficult to access, which is the Sahel. Everybody knows about that. Although its survival was somewhat assured, yet another challenge came from mostly educated group in North America, dissatisfied with how the front handled its foreign relations. This group completely severed ties with it, cut ties with it, depriving most needed material support. Eritreans for the Liberation in North America, FLNA, has been working as an effective propaganda arm in the front since its separation from the ELF. The guerrilla leadership, therefore, weighed in for some time and realized it cannot afford this let go without a fight. Soon, it began infiltrating each rebellious chapter in the USA and even the homes of steadfast individuals. EPLF hacks were dispatched to convince reluctant persons to return to the fold and to neutralize recalcitrant ones. It worked. Barely 5 months after FLNAD declared its disengagement, the rank and file came back. They paid their allegiance again, they returned back to the EPLF and showed their loyalty to the organization. The seemingly contentious issue is nothing more than a disagreement within the ELF and its mass organization, the FLNA. In all fairness, this should not have been the cause of the rift, because this is trivia, basically. So they told them, what's your relationship with Russia is, you got sphere, don't talk good about Russia, the Soviet Union, whatever. That wasn't the issue for Eritrea. But that caused the split, where FLNA declared its independence, leaving them out and leaving EPLF dry. It is recalled that the organization in its 6th Congress willfully declared 2 more minutes? Oh, okay. Anyway, these guys, they have, when they returned here, they returned back to EPLF, but they become part of the mass organization again. I just want to mention something here, but which is very, very important. Before FLNA declared its allegiance to EPLF, there were groups who warned them not to take that step. One of them is me, and it was here, 1975, August 15. We said, maintain your independence, and it is not to the best interest of Eritrea and the Eritrean people to be mass organization, to be part of the mass organizations. Maintain your independence, and you can criticize them if they did bad, you can praise them if they did good. But becoming part of them, that's the end of it, and that's what happened actually. As mass organization, FLNA continued pandering to the fronts within, in fact, becoming a loud megaphone for the front. That few news it wasn't good. Who would forget the blood of the innocent and the educated spilled in the plains and valleys of Eritrea? In 76, FLNA unashamedly became the useful tool of front when it fought tooth and nail against paper published in Europe, accusing EPLF of eliminating the educated and the Marxists. The organization denied such killings and attacked the document as false and defended EPLF's policy and vehemently stood against the accusation by that paper that came from Europe. People in Europe were writing that these people are killing educated people. These people are killing the Marxists. What are they doing? And FLNA comes in support of EPLF here. We were very few here who opposed that, actually. The other thing is, another most important thing is that there was a period in, I think Emmanuel can talk about it, there was a period where it was criticism, self-criticism. And unfortunately, by the way, those who were conducting that are now victims of EPLF. They are in jail. I know big people. But what basically that thing was, to make them look small. In other words, talk about what they have done when they were in Europe or the United States. And I would rather read this for us to understand it better. In a period called criticism and self-criticism, those suspected of not immersing themselves into what they call peasant culture by her appearance, thoughts, actions, and psyche was singled out as reactionaries and compelled to confess her past transgressions, meaning what? Recount some of the bourgeois vices in him. Some who joined the struggle from Europe and the US even went as far as apologizing for not fast peasantifying themselves. Peasantifying themselves, that's to borrow Joseph Gabriel's word. An educated man wants to be a peasant to me, to reassure his existence within the EPLF. This really did happen. And the other thing, I think I would stop it here, but to cap it all, now bear with me, to cap it all, he even disinvented, I'm telling you how Ato Isaias was against people of learning. To cap it all, he even disinvited the very students he sent to South Africa for postgraduate study. Unaccustomed to normal dialogue, when they were doing dialogue with him in South Africa, he was furious with students when asked about their future and the future of their country. The Sa'luk, as the word in Arabic described Isaias's character well, audaciously reminded them that their services, after all, is not that much indispensable. You can be wherever you are. We don't give a damn. Stay there. He can hire educated Indians to fill any vacant in higher education, of learning, or the civil service. This is exactly what he told them. From this vantage point, one is left with an impression that the exodus of hundreds of thousands of would-be teachers, social and physical scientists, builders, entertainers from Eritrea as refugees, if not deliberately encouraged, is a welcome development for the Kabbalah, whose inherited monastic life in the Sahel still lingers in their soul. Okay, I have almost finished. I have never been in whole or in part a staunch member of EPLF, much less a gun-toting person fighting the enemy or suppressing voices of dissent within. But I was told repeatedly that it's not safe to show any kind of fondness toward books. In that case, it's rare, if at all, to find an avid book reader within the rank. Some even hint that they ever put their feet on university ground. In one of the Tigray social media, a credible person relates a story of his cousin who hid his MSc degree from public, or even talk about it with his closest friends throughout his fighting days in Eritrea. He doesn't want to look educated, yes, I finished almost. There is no doubt Isaiah's outlook on education is shaped by his experience in the Haile Selassie University, 1966. His untimely expulsion due to his poor academic performances at the college has left a scar in his life to later averse anything connected with education. In his entire life as head of state, Isaias never visited the university, but played behind the scene to convert the university into a military recruiting ground. Soon after, he splintered the university into few colleges run by military personnel. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with a quote that the Chinese ambassador to Eritrea made in 2008. It was in WikiLeaks. You can refer it, guys. Isaias learned all the wrong things from China. That's what the ambassador said. He learned all the wrong things. What the Chinese diplomat was alluding to is that he was despotic enough to embrace the 30% that they themselves, the Chinese, think is bad part of Chairman Mao's teaching and practices. Yeah. Hey, last one. What more proof does one need to believe that the EPLF is indeed an anti-education, against free thought, and less appreciative of skills and innovations than witnessing the dismantling of a promising 7-year-old research and information center for Eritrea, RISE, soon after Eritrea's independence? That's exactly what he did. This thing was operating here, was educated research people presenting papers, going seminars. All of a sudden, when they enter Asmara, they make it seize that organization. Thank you very much. It can go on, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abio. I always enjoy Dr. Abio's presentations. They're very thorough and deep. Thank you. I'm going to invite Dr. Mengestab Tesfayohannes, but before doing that, I have an announcement. Atv Asena had a very wonderful presentation that was entertaining as well as educational. We cut it short because of time, so we're hoping to bring him back at 6:30 after all the presentations are over, so make sure to stay. Without further ado, I'm going to invite Dr. Mengestab to introduce himself and present his work. Thank you.
Okay. I think I don't want to waste your time, therefore I will introduce myself briefly. Briefly, my name is Status Johannes. I am working at New York State University, but I worked also in Asmara University and in South Africa, University of Witwatersrand, University of Botswana, Waterloo University in Canada. Therefore, I believe that I have some global academic experience. Now, what I would like to simply discuss with you is about the forgotten but very important topic, because the Eritrean regime, to function sustainably, to survive, needs resources and capabilities. This is very important. Without resources, the desired or the required resources and capabilities, it's very difficult to run a government or a regime. Now, the biggest question here is, how can the government generate the required economic and, or let's say, monetized and non-monetized resources and capabilities to do what the regime is doing? That's why I gave a title like you can see, Building an Effective Public Financial Management. Public financial management means the government resources, from where, how it is generated, how it is managed, how it is used, and what the performance. What is the performance? These are the three things. Because economic resources are very, very fragile. You can use them for wrong things, you can squander them, or you can use them for productive, developmental, and advancement of the people and the country in economic, in socio-economic sense. Okay. Oh, this one is not working. Okay, let me. Now, I don't want to waste again our time. The purpose of this research or this message is, first of all, we would like to get some information, financial, economic information that can help you to know the current situation of the country economically. The second one is to highlight consequences of the inerticism in the governance, which is very, very loud and very, everybody knows, very public. It's a public knowledge by now. And the third one is current dysfunctional public finance management. By the way, we should not consider public finance management as simply. Probability is the most important topic and the most important issue in any developmental continuum. And then briefly, I will disclose the observed weaknesses disclose and identify the objective weaknesses, and then I will try to recommend certain things that the future Eritrea, the future democratic Eritrea can do, or those who will be in charge then can take action, strategic action, tactical action, and operational actions as well. Okay, you can see above the port of Massawa and below Singapore, the Singaporean flag. Now in the middle, can we recreate? Or probably it is a lost agenda, but could we recreate the tiger? Well, now let's see if we can. Okay, now I am just talking hindsight, 2020 hindsight. It means now here is Singapore. It is in the Strait of Malacca, which is very strategic and vital lane, sea lane. That's why the port of Singapore is one of the best, well-organized, high-tech, very expanded, accommodating, attracted throughout the world because of the strategic location. Now let's see the Eritrean location. You can see that there is Bab el Mandeb down, and there is Suez Canal up, which is managed and owned by Egypt. In fact, the coming 25 years, there will be a bridge from the Yemenis town all the way to Djibouti and Eritrea, up to what is called Ras Dumera. Therefore, you can see the potential of the country if it is managed and administered by able, technocratic, democratic leaders. Hopefully in the future we'll find them. Therefore, if you pass through from the Singaporean Malacca all the way to the Red Sea, from the Red Sea to Suez Canal. Now, I would like to tell you here, Suez Canal is already expanded. Previously, it is 128 kilometers long. It's only one at a time. One ship can pass through, while the other ship probably wait in the port side, and then after the ship in the process is finished, and then the other ship should come back. Now it is 2 lanes. It means side by side, 2 very large cargo ships or any can pass through. They have a strategic plan for the coming 15 years to expand it into 4 lanes. It means 4 ships can work with. This means the Red Sea will be more vital and more important economically, strategically, and many others, ecologically, etc., than it is now. Why? Because okay, therefore, there are expectations based on evidential validation. It means based on research and based on considerations, strategies, and so on. The almost 30% of the entire economy or the entire shipment will pass through the Red Sea. Therefore, you can imagine the importance of the port of Massawa, the port of Aseb, and other smaller ports probably that will be built in the future. Now, okay, let me. Not working. What's the problem? Okay, I will. Yeah. Okay, now yes, I can. Okay, therefore you can see also resource-wise, I am business management educated. Therefore, I always, you know what we do, or what we say always, any company or any country for that matter can survive if it does all its activities better, cheaper, faster, and easier. Then it will achieve a competitive advantage. It's not only a company, whether it's small, medium, or big company, like like the multinational corporations, countries as well. Michael Porter, a famous strategy guy from Harvard University, wrote 1993, A Competitive Advantage of Nations. He clearly explains that if a country to achieve competitive advantage, then a country should do its homework. Better, cheaper, faster, easier. That's it. Therefore, we need to consider that one also in order to, that's why the Singaporean government did under the Lee Kuan Yew leadership. Okay, sorry, yeah. Now, well, if you see Eritrea, it's not only the harmony, the support one another, and other, it's not only for human beings, for Eritreans. It was for animals also, these domestic animals. You can see that very 1 liter water is shared among the camel and the donkey. That's what our culture was, let's say was. Then if we do that, our socio-economic development will be more sustainable and fast. That's what we always think. This is very regrettable. Now, here, how can we explain the unfortunate situational scenario at this time of Eritrea? Now I will be faster because I don't have time. Now, you can see that extreme low level of human capital. Several speakers here told you already, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Therefore, there is almost, I have a comparison here in my statistical report, in human resource, in human capital, or we call it human development. I compared Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Kenya, and Uganda. Now, I extracted this one from Moy Ibrahim Foundation, very comprehensive, and Bloomberg, as well as World Bank, African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the PTI, and many others, very credible and very comprehensive reporters, or they can give you statistical index as well. Therefore, let me read a little bit. In fact, let me compare. In overall governance score, for Eritrea is 25.9%, for Djibouti is 42%, for Ethiopia is 46%, for South Sudan is 18.5%, for Sudan is 34.5%, and for Kenya is 58.7%, and for Uganda is 37.5%. For Africa, entire sub-Saharan Africa, is 48.9. Now let me see the rank. The rank is Djibouti 39 out of 54 countries. Let's say one country was not considered here. And Eritrea is 52 out of 54 countries. Rank for Ethiopia, 32 out of 54. For South Sudan, 54 out of 54, graduated. For Sudan, 47 out of 54 countries. For Kenya, 13 out of 54. And for Uganda, 31 out of 54. This is in overall governance. By the way, there are more details, sub-details as well. If you are interested, please just write MO Ibrahim Foundation, Total Governance and Economic Development Index. Therefore, just go there and Google there, you will find it, all the details. There are 105, 200 types of details that can show the performance of countries in Africa. And here, Economic Foundation, then I will stop that. Economic Foundation is, Eritrea is 52 out of 54 countries. And Djibouti, 42 out of, 42% and 38 out of 54. Ethiopia, 27 out of 54 in economic opportunity and development. And South Sudan, 54 out of 54 graduated. And Sudan, 43 out of 54. And Kenya, 6 out of 54. And Uganda, 15 out of 54. Now I will stop here, but if I tell you more and more, I don't want to disappoint you. Therefore, there are also many other parameters, sub-parameters, many others, so that the whole detail will be there. I just mentioned this one, just a sample. Okay. Therefore, all this, what I told you, or what I shared with you, is the unfortunate situation of the Eritrean as a nation, as a state. Because if you don't have the desired resources and capabilities, if you don't develop them, nature doesn't like vacuum. Who will fill the vacuum? The vacuum will be filled by the powerful, the rich, the educated, the professionally developed sector. From anywhere it can come. In economics, we say that it is zero-sum game. There is no socialized economic rationality. There is only zero-sum game economic rationality. If you don't develop, especially the human capital, there are very high probabilities that you remain in your country, in your own country, as modern slave, probably as servant of those who have all these endowments. Okay, therefore, these are some of those I would like to share with you. The gross national income, GNI, we call it. By the way, there is a difference between, in a simple words, GNI and GDP. GNI means entirely produced in the country, locally, domestically, plus coming from outside, entering, revenue from outside, minus exporting. Some, for example, in America has $23 trillion of GDP, but the GNI is almost similar. The reason is America's getting out from America and coming to America almost equal. America invests, and many like us, even including remittance, $4.5 trillion. But good enough to America, there are also foreign investments and foreign other American corporations are also bringing income, almost equivalent to $4.5 trillion. Therefore, it's balanced. Now we can say in America, in most developed countries, the difference between GNI, gross national income, and the GDP, gross domestic product, are almost equal. In Eritrea, it's quite different. Why? The domestic economy is very, very small, and then the GNI, the Eritrean GNI is partially like 30% from remittance, from development aid, from other things is coming. The domestically now a little bit better. Why? Because there are now mineral extraction resources activities. Otherwise, the national economy or the domestic economy is all like trickle-down economy, very small in agriculture, very small from industry, very small from service. Okay. The same thing also, there are deficit. The deficit is covered by the Eritrean government from local borrowing and from outside also borrowing. But unfortunately, the Eritrean credit score, we call it credit history, is very low, and the Eritrean government not getting not much from private lenders and other lenders. Therefore, the budget deficit is covered by the local borrowing or domestic banks. It means all the money that everybody saves is taken by the government to fill the gap or to fulfill or to, let's say, to cover the deficit. Therefore, this is not a good thing. Why? If you take all the money that is saved in the local banks, then the entrepreneurs, the business people will not have any money. Or those who have good innovative idea, entrepreneurial idea, they will no means of getting the money for further investment. Okay, I think he's telling me time, but he took my time, therefore I will add a little bit time. Yeah, because, therefore now, monetary and fiscal policy, these are in economic terms. Monetary means policies or management of money, like what we call it here, Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve is like Bank of Eritrea, for example, here in America, but Bank of England or the German Bundesbank and so on. Therefore, these are the national banks or state banks, and they usually have monetary policy. The fiscal policy is run by the government. The government by probably Ministry of Finance, the Treasury, the Ministry of National Development, and so on. These are the most important institutional capacity in governance that usually run the fiscal policy. What is fiscal policy here? It's about how to collect tax, how much to collect tax, how you change the taxation, how you raise the resources, let's say from here and there, etc. All these management of resources generation is part of fiscal policy, which is very vital. Okay. Now let me be a little. Okay. What are the 4 dimensions of public financial management? The first one, I will be very quick here. Dimension 1, we call fiscal sustainability, maximizing resource mobilization from revenue and borrowings, resource allocation in accordance with policy priorities. Dimension 2 is effective performance management, delivering value of money, effectiveness and efficiency in the productivity of national economy, managing the budget. The third dimension is fiduciary risk management. If you don't have audit, if you don't control your money, money is important thing. Where you can be friends. We can be friends. When it comes to money, there are many enemies will come. Therefore, fiduciary means here the government should establish institutional capacity to take care of the public money. It's our money, our resources. Therefore, this is very important. And another one is dimension 4, which is governance. How can you govern the public financial sector? There are 5 important ministries or institutional capacities that usually are responsible and serve as pillars helping the governance, the economic development, and everything with economic development. Okay, therefore, it is their work, which is the 4th dimension. Now, Oh, okay. Okay. Therefore, these institutions in Eritrea, they were established in 1994. When? You know that, when? 1994. There were many good people. In fact, I was there as one of them, probably. I was in Asena University at that time, instructor, and they called us, I remember, in the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development at that time, led by Tegadalai Haile Duru, and then Yosef Gabriselassie Yosef in Toto, probably know him. Therefore, these were the people who really established these kind of institutions at that time, 1994. These are the Ministry of Finance, then the Ministry of National Development. Now the Ministry of Finance is led by Birhana Habtemariam, the minister, and the Ministry of National Development is by Dr. Gerlis Mikael. These are now the ministers. And the Treasury, which is usually here in America, the Treasury is by its own, but in Eritrea, it is under the Ministry of Finance. And then the Bank of Eritrea, you know it, dysfunctional, and the Office of the Auditor General. These have important job, important role in managing the public resources, disbursements, productivity, performance, and feedback, and control. Okay. Now, I will pass this one. The need for it is very important. I explained already. Now, the current situational scenario of public finance management. I will be fast here. First, information blockade by the government of Eritrea. No information. The IMF people, a lot of experts came to evaluate it. Okay, they say, okay, let's evaluate it. And then they told them, no report. Nothing. They shut down. The African Development Bank group, they came, they tried to evaluate, blocked, or delayed the projects, for example, training and improving the institutional capacity of these 5 institutions or ministries. Still 7 years. The project already, the money is given 7 years, no training. Yeah. Okay, then unfortunately, the PFDJ-led government has never prepared any official budget during the last 32 years. Completely blocked. Therefore, there is no way to know the resources, how they are generated. But of course, you can guess intellectually, because at least there are information that we can get from here, and then we can use our what is called technical analysis ability to do that. Okay. Okay, therefore, this dysfunctional because of 2 governments are running in Eritrea. The first one is a clandestine Hydri Trust. You know, Hydri Trust is run every economic income, everything generated is usually go to Hydri, which is called the shadow government. And then the Hydri Trust, all including from mining and from many others, usually go to Hydri Trust, which is headed by Hagos Kisha or Hagos Gabriel Kisha. And then the Kisha generosity will go to the Ministry of Finance, the Treasury, the Bank of Eritrea, the Auditor General, and they pay their salaries. That's it. That's what government. Okay. And this shadow government is now, you don't know how much collected from different sources, including remittances. But we can guess it's about the Eritrean government or the JNI in Eritrea is approximately between $3.6 to $4 billion. It means you guys can know that what is the portion of remittance from here and there. Remember,